Hello, I'm back again with a new video, but that's pretty obvious. Um, Today we're going to be asking what I think is a pretty interesting question. We're going to be asking ourselves the question, what is real? Now, before I get started, I want to let you all know that not every not every episode I'm going to have an answer to my questions. Some of these questions are pretty difficult. Some are pretty easy. They might have answers. Maybe I just haven't found them. Maybe I have found them. And if I have, I'll tell you. But sometimes these questions just are very hard to answer. The question of what is real is it's a question that is, I think, stumped people for a long time. I don't know how long, but it seems like something that, if we still don't have an answer to it, then there's obviously some more thinking that we need to do on it. But then again, it is a philosophical question, so there's not really going to be an objective answer, I don't think. So what is real? Well, to be honest, I'm not really sure where to start with this question, but in the thumbnail, as I'm sure you've seen, I used a picture of Joy from Blade Runner 2049, if you didn't know who that was, because I think that would be a good place to start, right? There's a lot of things about her that are real, not real. It's pretty complicated, but I'll get into it. So I'm not gonna spoil any of the movie because honestly, it's a really good movie. I recommend it to everybody. But I'm just gonna tell you about the character. So there's a character in the movie whose name is Joy, and she's basically the girlfriend of Agent K, who's the main character, Ryan Gosling, right? So she's his girlfriend, but or maybe she's his wife. I don't really remember. But the thing that makes her different, I guess, is that she's actually a hologram. She's not a real person, right? But then I was thinking, well, she's not really a real person, or at least not a real human being, right? But that gets into a lot of weird stuff because then it's like, well, what qualifies as a human being? What qualifies as a person? There's a lot of things that you really need to consider when asking yourself stuff like that. But so the thing is, she's a hologram, right? So she's a real hologram, I guess. Is she a real wife? I'm just gonna say, for the sake of the video, I'm just gonna say she's a wife because I'm not sure if she's like a girlfriend or something. Or actually, I think we'll just refer to her as a partner. So she's a real partner, but then she's not really a real. Okay, so let me think about this. She's a real partner, right? Because he goes home to her every night. She's there. She's there for him. She loves him. But then, well, does she really love him because she's not capable of love because she's like an AI? Okay, so okay, so she's a real partner, right? So we're going to say that she's a real partner. Okay. Now, is she a real person? Well, okay, before we ask that, is she a real I seriously don't know where to go with this. Um okay, so is she a real person? Well, what is a person? A person is someone who can think, who can feel, who can manipulate the environment, I guess. But then that would be, I guess, an organism, right? That's way too broad, way too vague. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But I think one of the things that distinguishes a person from anything else is that they have rights. But then animals kind of sort of have rights too. Like you can't just kill an animal, right? Not any animal, at least. And it also depends on where you live. But I don't know. I think that's getting way too off topic. Um, I mean, it does have to do with the topic, right? But I think it's getting more into a rights thing than of a reality thing, if that makes any sense. So, is she a person? Well, she looks like a person. She sounds like a person. She interacts with her environment, but not really because she kind of, in the movie, she makes, like hologram things too. So I guess she doesn't really interact with the environment. She kind of makes her own. It's hard to explain, but if you watch the movie, I think you'll understand what I'm trying to say. Or actually, in SpongeBob, of all things, in SpongeBob, I think there's an episode where Plankton is eating, or it's that episode where he's switching with Krabs, Mr. Krabs, and he's switching lives and stuff. And there's a part where Plankton eats like hologram food. That's what I'm trying to say. She makes like hologram things like that. But we still haven't answered the question of, is she a person or not? I mean, I guess she would be, because I mean, if you think about it, don't we kind of consider Siri a person? I think a lot of people don't. They say, well, she's not a person, she's not real, she's just a phone, right? Or she's just a thing on the phone. She's somebody on the phone. Well, if she's somebody, then I think she would be a person, right? I don't know. But I mean, if you talk to them, right? If you talk about them, if they can do things for you, if they can talk back to you, then surely they must be some sort of person, right? So I guess for now, yes, I would consider Siri a person, and I would consider Joy a person, and I would also consider probably AI a person, to be honest. Now, was that on topic? Was that off topic? I'm not sure, but I think that was probably a pretty important point to make, just for the sake of the video. But on to the next question. Is she real? I probably should have said this at the beginning, but I think it is important to ask yourself what you mean by real when you ask whether something is real or not. But then you might ask, what options of real are there? Well, first of all, there's tangible and there's intangible things, right? So there are tangible things, which are physical things that exist in reality. You can see them. You can basically perceive them with any of the five senses, right? So anything that's tangible is, anything like, a dog, a chair, an apple, a car, right? A building, an ant, an atom, a star, An intangible thing is something that doesn't really exist, but does, if that makes any sense. So like concepts, I think, and ideas are probably the best example of this. So something like numbers, for example. Are numbers real? Well, no, because you can't hear them, you can't see them, you can't taste them, you can't smell them, and you can't touch them. But we understand them and we use them nonetheless, which is kind of interesting to think about. I think that says a lot about people, humans as a whole. I don't really know what, but I think that's kind of profound when really taken into consideration like that. So, is joy real in the tangible sense? No, I don't think so. Is she real in the intangible sense? Yes, because she's a hologram, right? But then, is the hologram real? Well, yes, because you're seeing it. And that's where things get kind of tricky, as you can probably tell. Because I think it also matters what you consider her, right? If you say, if you were Agent K in the movie, the main character, Ryan Gosling, right? If you were Ryan Gosling in the movie and you said, this is my girlfriend, Joy, people would say, well, she's not a real girlfriend, she's just a hologram, right? But if you said, this is my hologram, Joy, then people would say, oh, that's pretty cool, she's pretty or whatever, right? So I think it really does matter what you consider things like that, I guess. But that also takes us into a very interesting part of the question is the fact that things that are real can be tangible and intangible. So the question of what is real starts to go in many different directions, and therefore I think that's why there's not really a definite answer for what is real. So if we can kind of tie all that together, then maybe we can find a definite answer. But then by nature, it kind of is a question that will by default go in different directions. So, you kind of want to ask yourself, well, should we just get rid of the terms tangible and intangible? But it's not really that simple if you think about it, because tangible and intangible are very important terms which we use to describe reality, right? So maybe we should take a much simpler look at this question if we can, or at least I'm going to try to, right? So what is real? So what is real is essentially anything that exists, right? So what exists? Well, anything that exists is anything that, like I said, we can perceive with our five senses. But then you can't perceive thoughts or ideas with your five senses. And okay, I know there's more than five senses, but just for the sake of argument, I mean, I don't want to really talk about any of the other ones. But we're not getting too biological about this. But anyways, the fact that you can also think about something kind of makes it real. So that's why the word intangible kind of came about, because if you can think about something, then doesn't it exist in some form or another? I think we can go all the way back to Descartes, in some sense, because we can look at what he said, when he was thinking about the fact, because, this isn't an old question, people have been asking this for hundreds of years. But, when he was thinking about what is real, he was trying to figure this out, and he said, the only thing I can really know for certain that is real in this universe is me, because I'm here and I'm thinking and I know I'm thinking. And that's when he said his famous quote, I think, therefore I am. So, so obviously consciousness is real. But how do we know that? We know that because we experience it, we use it, we have seen its effects on the world, we've seen its effects on us. But then there are some people that do say that there's no such thing as a consciousness, because you could say that a consciousness is really just a bunch of neurons, and you don't really have a mind, it's just your brain doing things, But I think consciousness is really, I think we use consciousness as a term to describe all of that happening, right? Because you don't want to just say, well, I did something bad and it's been on my brain for a while. That sounds kind of weird. You'd say it's been on my conscious for a while, or consciousness no, I think it's conscious, right? But yeah, I think the reason why he said that is because, the reason why we know we are is because we are aware, right? Awareness is something that really helps us define what reality is, and it really helps us to set some parameters around what is and what isn't real, and what we should and shouldn't accept as real. And that's how we know we exist, because, right, I mean, if you think about yourself, you can look at your hand, for example, and you can think, well, this is my hand, I'm moving it, I'm using my brain to move it, I can use it to grab something, and you feel that. The fact that we can feel, the fact that we can think, the fact that we can think about feeling, I know this sounds kind of weird, But, the fact that we can do all that, it kind of asserts the fact that we do exist, and the fact that we experience things like feelings and emotions and thoughts, and the fact that we have senses. We do exist, so we as people are real without a doubt. Now, are other people real? Now, that's a completely different question. That can bring up the whole simulation thing, because if you think about it, there really is no way to prove. I mean, there are some ways to prove that people are real. Like, you can touch them, you can see them. I mean, I'm not saying you should go around, tasting and smelling people, right? But, the fact that you can talk to people, but then if you think about it, you really can't prove that people exist. You could be talking to someone and it's like, well, what if I am in a simulation? What if this is all just really, really advanced, like VR or something, right? I'm not into the whole simulation idea, by the way. I don't believe it, but I'm saying, the people do have a point. So, like, when we talk, what is talking? Talking is essentially when you have one conscious being with an idea or a set of ideas, and they communicate that through some sort of medium, through another, or to another conscious being or beings, right? And that's really the key point, really, is that when there is an idea of some sort, that must mean that there is somebody behind that idea, that there is a real person, a real sentient being that either is or was behind that at some point, right? So it's obvious that there's not only you that exist, but that other people also exist. So I think that kind of makes the idea of solipsism seem kind of incoherent. Really, I think that's where it kind of falls apart, because it's obvious that other people besides us exist and have existed, that, I'm not the one that created my home that I live in. Somebody else did that. For example, somebody created this city around me. Somebody created all the TV shows and movies and books that I enjoy. The fact that we experience creations that are not ours is, the thing that makes the existence of other people kind of set in stone, really. So when it comes to the question of what is real, I think we can, check off humans and other people, right? I think we can check off basically anything that creates. So that would be humans, right? Or I guess really any eukaryotic organism as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, so okay, so for now, I guess the answer that we're going to use for now to the question of what is real is anything that creates. All right. So we know that people and animals are real. So now we have some sort of answer, right? So now let's ask ourselves, what do we know that creates besides humans and animals and, well, living creatures, really? Well, not all living creatures, because we haven't covered plants yet. But let's look at plants, right? What do plants create? They create carbon dioxide, right? That's what gives us, or that's what allows us to, they create oxygen, I'm sorry. They create oxygen. We're the ones that exhale carbon dioxide. We breathe in the oxygen that they exhale. Then we exhale carbon dioxide to let them breathe in. And so it's this whole cycle, right? So they release gases, right? Gases are something that we can measure, right? So, and that also helps us define reality, is that we have created tools and instruments of which we can measure things, right? We can measure distance, we can measure units of weight, time. Although time is another thing. I think that's a whole concept. I don't really want to get into that right now, but maybe another video, because that's a really interesting topic. But anyway, back to the actual topic, right? But I think that's also a really important point to make, is going back to the whole tools of things that can measure other things, right? I think the fact that we can also measure things also kind of reassures the fact that things exist. So actually I think time does have something to do with this, actually. Let's talk about that, because I don't know why I said time wasn't real, or that it didn't have anything to do with the topic. But time is something that we use every day, right? It's something that a lot of us, I think about every day. I know I think about it every day. I'm always trying to conserve my time, trying to be as productive as possible, at least. But the fact that time can be measured shows that it exists. The fact that we care about it, think about it so much, shows that it exists, because time also creates. What does it create? It creates that thought in us of itself, right? So what really created it, I'm not too sure. I don't think time really has a creator, really, because, well, okay, well, maybe that's a question for another time. But the fact that things depend on time, right? So let's take something like entropy, right? Entropy is the thing, or it's the law of, I don't know if it's it is physics, right? But or no, chemistry? I'm not sure. But it's essentially this law that says that with time, heat is lost in pretty much everything, I think. So, like, let's use an example of, like, ice melting. Ice melts because it loses heat, right? But without time, it really can't melt, because one of the things that I always think about when I think about time is the fact that if time didn't exist, really nothing would be happening. Everything would just be frozen, because time moves in one direction, right? It doesn't move backwards. It can't move in any other direction ever other than forward, and it moves at the exact same rate. Well, I guess we kind of don't know how fast time moves, because, I mean, if you look at a clock, you could think, well, it's moving at the exact same speed all the time, right? But it's just programmed that way. It was just built that way. Like, time could possibly be fluctuating and we don't even know it, because and people will say, well, we could base time off of that we do base time off of the movement of the sun, for example, or the movement of the planet. But I don't think time is based off of I don't think time should be based off of speed, or the speed of movement of an object, but the speed of an aging of an object. That's how I see time, as the movement, or as the progression of age in things, not the progression of speed or anything like that. At least not physical speed. That's why Einstein said that time was relative. And I think that's important to realize because, people can perceive time differently. That's also why a lot of people say, time flies when you're having fun. And it really does, I mean, if you're staring at a wall all day, you're just going to be really bored. And, you know, the saying, minutes feel like hours, that kind of thing. But, if you're hanging out with your friends and you're at a party or something and you're having fun at that party, maybe, an hour will feel like a couple minutes or something. That's in some sense why, when kids have a play date or something, they always want to say, um, you know, can they stay longer, or can I stay longer if they're the ones staying over at the other person's house, because, they don't feel like they had enough time with that person. So, yeah, I think that's another important point to bring up. So, it's also important, I think, that we recognize that time is measured by the aging and, I guess, deterioration of things, not speed. But I feel like I want to apologize. I feel like I made this video more about time for a long time more than about reality. But I think that was kind of important to a degree because, time is a very important part of our reality. It's one of the defining features or traits, I guess, of the universe as a whole that we live in. So I think it's important that we have those conversations, right? Conversations within conversations, if that makes any sense. But now that that's out of the way, I think I can go back to the original question, and finally come to a conclusion, or at least a conclusion for me. So, what is real? Real, I think, is anything that exists and can be perceived by a conscious being to exist, that also has the capability of creating something that can also possess the capability to create something that can be perceived by a conscious being. I know that was a lot, but yeah, I think that was probably the most clear answer I could have possibly given. But that's just my answer. With my videos, I will always give, or not always, but I will try to give an answer that I believe is correct. But you, as a viewer, don't have to always accept my answers if you don't feel that they are correct. I'm always open to new ideas. So if somebody doesn't agree with this, they can feel free to have some sort of discussion with me. But I do think that that is the answer to what is real for me. So now that that's out of the way, I think I can end this video on a satisfactory note. So ask yourself this: what is real? I will see you all in the next video.